When a man starts wanting more than friendship, the very first thing that changes is not what he says, but how he directs his attention. Attention is the currency of the mind. We all look, listen, and engage with many people every day, but we only focus on a few. Friendship is wide and relaxed, attraction is narrow and precise. When his feelings shift, you feel it because his awareness begins to orbit you in a way it didn't before. You'll notice it in small, almost invisible ways. He starts remembering details that don't actually matter to anyone who is just being polite. What you said weeks ago, how you take your coffee, something you mentioned in passing about a stressful day. That's not random. The brain only stores what it deems emotionally relevant. When he recalls these things effortlessly, it means your presence has moved from the background of his life into the foreground. There's also a subtle difference in how he listens. A friend listens to respond. A man who is emotionally drawn to you listens to understand. He pauses before he speaks. He tracks your tone. He notices when your energy shifts. There's a kind of quiet attentiveness that appears, not because he's trying to impress you, but because your inner world has become important to him. Psychologically, this is what happens when someone begins to link their sense of emotional safety to another person. This is where many women get confused. They assume attraction will look dramatic. They wait for bold declarations, big gestures, or overt flirtation. But in real life, attraction usually shows up as something far more intimate presence. He is mentally with you when he's with you. He doesn't check out. He doesn't multitask. His mind doesn't wander. That's because when desire begins to form, the brain reduces distraction. It wants to protect the connection. You might also notice that he starts tailoring himself to you, not in a fake way, but in a responsive one. He adjusts how he jokes. He becomes more careful with certain topics. He becomes more curious about what you think. That's not manipulation, that's alignment. When someone cares, they naturally try to meet you where you are. What's fascinating is that this focus often appears before he's even aware of his feelings. His body and mind know first. His behavior changes before his story about the relationship changes. That's why paying attention to consistency matters more than paying attention to words. He might still call you a friend, but if his attention is steady, intentional, and emotionally tuned to you, something deeper is already happening. And here's the part that matters most for you. You don't need to chase, test, or pressure this focus. You simply need to notice it. When you become aware of how someone is showing up, you gain clarity without losing your power. You stop overthinking and start observing. You move from anxiety to understanding, because when someone's attention begins to rest on you, it's not a coincidence. It's the mind quietly saying, "This person matters to me." And the moment you learn to recognize that, you stop guessing who's truly interested and you start choosing from a place of calm, not confusion. When a man begins to want more than friendship, something subtle but deeply important starts to happen. You move from being someone who fits into his life to someone his life begins to organize itself around. This is what emotional priority looks like. It isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It shows up in the quiet decisions he makes about where his time, energy, and attention go when no one is watching. In friendship, people connect when it's convenient. In attraction, people connect when it's meaningful. You'll notice that he starts to create space for you even when his schedule is full, not because he has more free time, but because your presence has become something his nervous system seeks. The human brain is always trying to move toward what feels rewarding and away from what feels neutral. When you become emotionally significant to him, your name, your voice, your messages begin to carry a different weight. This is where many women get misled. They think priority means constant texting, non-stop availability, or dramatic displays of effort. But real priority is more refined than that. It's the reliability of his engagement. It's how he checks in when he hasn't heard from you. It's how he follows through on plans. It's how he remembers what matters to you and factors it into his decisions. These behaviors come from emotional investment, not obligation. There's also something important happening beneath the surface. When a man starts to prioritize you emotionally, he's not just choosing you, he's choosing the version of himself he becomes around you. We all gravitate toward people who make us feel more alive, more understood, more grounded. When you bring that out in him, he doesn't want to lose access to it. So he makes room for you, even if he can't yet explain why. This is why emotional priority often shows up before romantic language. He might not be ready to label what he feels, but his actions are already telling the truth. He will be more consistent, more thoughtful, more present. He'll start initiating contact not out of boredom, but out of connection. That's the difference between someone who enjoys you and someone who is beginning to need you in a healthy, emotional way. What's powerful about this is that you don't have to demand it. You don't have to negotiate for it. When attraction is real, priority happens naturally. Trying to force it only creates resistance because desire doesn't respond to pressure, it responds to resonance. And this is where your self-respect becomes essential. When you value your own time and energy, you create a standard that others feel. Men who are emotionally drawn to you will rise to that standard. Men who are not will fade. That's not rejection, it's clarity. So instead of asking, does he like me? A more useful question becomes, is he making me a priority in his emotional world? Because when a man is falling for you, he doesn't just want to see you. He wants you to be part of the rhythm of his life. And when you learn to recognize that rhythm, you stop chasing attention and start allowing connection to come to you. One of the most honest indicators that a man's feelings are shifting from friendship into something deeper is not found in what he says, but in how his body begins to behave around you. The body is remarkably truthful. Long before the mind is ready to admit desire, the nervous system has already decided what matters. When a man starts to want more, his physical presence changes in ways that are subtle but incredibly revealing. You'll notice that he positions himself differently. He sits closer. He angles his body toward you. He leans in when you speak, even if the room is loud enough that he doesn't need to. This isn't just politeness. This is proximity-seeking behavior. From a psychological perspective, human beings move physically toward what feels emotionally safe and emotionally rewarding. When you become that for him, his body starts closing the distance. There's also a shift in eye contact. A friend glances. A man who is emotionally drawn to you holds your gaze, not in a staring, awkward way, but in a way that lingers just a fraction longer than necessary. Eye contact is one of the fastest ways the brain creates emotional bonding. When he looks at you this way, he's unconsciously trying to deepen the connection. You might also sense something protective beginning to emerge. He becomes more aware of who else is around you. He notices when someone interrupts you. He steps in when you're uncomfortable. This isn't about control, it's about emotional investment. When a man starts to feel attached, his instincts shift from neutral to involved. Your experience starts to matter to him on a visceral level. What's important to understand here is that none of this is planned. Men don't wake up one day and decide to lean in more, mirror your movements, or subtly guard your space. These are automatic behaviors driven by the brain's attachment system. His body is responding to a growing emotional bond before his logic has caught up. This is also why mixed signals can be so confusing. A man may still call you a friend, yet his body is telling a very different story. He lingers when saying goodbye. He looks for excuses to be near you. He becomes more physically aware of you without necessarily touching you. that tension you feel, that's the space between what he feels and what he's ready to say. For you, the power comes from learning to observe this without overreacting to it. When you notice his body language changing, you don't need to rush to define the relationship. You simply need to stay present and grounded. Attraction grows best in an atmosphere of calm awareness, not anxious interpretation. And here's something deeply important: the way a man positions himself around you is often how he positions you in his emotional world. When he moves closer physically, he is usually moving closer emotionally too. So if you ever find yourself wondering whether he sees you as more than a friend, don't just listen to his words. Watch how his body responds when you enter the room. Watch how his attention, his posture, and his presence subtly shift toward you. Because when someone's nervous system begins to treat you as special, the truth is already there, waiting for you to notice it. When a man begins to want more than friendship, one of the most revealing shifts you'll notice is not in how much he talks, but in what he starts to talk about. He moves away from surface-level interaction and begins testing emotional depth. This is one of the most important stages of attraction, because before a man risks romance, he needs to know that emotional closeness with you feels safe. You'll feel it when he starts opening up in ways he never did before. He talks about his fears, his past, the things that shaped him, not because he suddenly decided to be vulnerable, but because vulnerability is the bridge his mind is building between who he is and who he might become with you. The human brain doesn't seek emotional exposure unless it senses a potential emotional reward. At the same time, he becomes more curious about your inner world, not just what you're doing, but how you think, how you feel, how you interpret life. These are not casual questions. Your emotional probes. He's trying to understand whether there is compatibility at a level deeper than attraction. This is his subconscious way of asking, could this be something real? What's fascinating is that men often do this without realizing what they're doing. They feel drawn, so they start sharing. They feel connected, so they start asking. This is the psychology of bonding at work. Emotional intimacy always precedes romantic risk because no one wants to open their heart in a place that doesn't feel secure. This is where many women unintentionally shut the door without knowing it. They keep things light. They joke, they deflect, they assume that deep conversation is too much. But when a man is testing emotional intimacy, he's not looking for perfection. He's looking for presence. He wants to know that when things are real, you don't disappear. That doesn't mean you need to overshare or turn every conversation into therapy. It means allowing space for sincerity. It means being willing to speak honestly when he does. Emotional intimacy is built not by dramatic confession, but by mutual openness. And here's something important. When a man feels emotionally safe with you, attraction doesn't just grow, it stabilizes. Lust is exciting, but emotional safety is what makes a man stay. When he feels understood rather than judged, he relaxes into the connection. And in that relaxation, desire deepens. You might notice that he starts lingering in conversations. He doesn't want to hang up. He asks follow-up questions. He brings things up from past talks. This is emotional investment forming in real time. He's building a narrative of us, even if he hasn't said that word yet. Your role here is not to push, but to receive. Let him show you who he is. Let him feel seen. That's where trust grows, and trust is the foundation of every meaningful romantic relationship. Because when a man is testing emotional intimacy, he's not just seeing if you like him, he's seeing if you feel like home. One of the clearest ways to tell whether a man wants more than friendship is what happens when you stop being completely available to him. This is where emotional truth reveals itself. when you pull back slightly, not in a manipulative way, but simply by living your own life. A man who only sees you as a friend barely notices. A man who is emotionally invested, however, feels the shift immediately. This reaction isn't about insecurity, it's about attachment. The human brain becomes sensitive to the absence of things it values. When your presence has started to matter to him, even small changes in access create an internal response. He might check in more. He might become curious about what you're doing. He might seem a little more engaged than before. That's not weakness. That's emotional awareness waking up. Many women misinterpret this. They think, if he really likes me, he should be calm. But calmness is what happens when something is secure. When something is in the process of becoming meaningful, there is a natural alertness. It's the mind saying, I don't want to lose this. That's how attachment forms. What's powerful about this sign is that it doesn't require you to perform. You don't need to play games or disappear. You simply need to maintain a full life. When you are busy, fulfilled, and grounded in yourself, it creates a healthy distance that allows his feelings to surface. You give his emotions room to breathe. This is also where self-respect becomes magnetic. When you don't overextend, when you don't chase, when you don't rush to fill every gap, you signal that your time is valuable. Men who are emotionally drawn to you respond to that value by stepping forward. Men who are not simply drift away. Both outcomes are clarity. You may notice that he becomes more thoughtful when you're less available. He might try harder to make plans. He might be more emotionally present when you do talk. This isn't because he's being trained, it's because he's realizing that access to you is not automatic. Desire grows where appreciation lives. And here's something deeply important. A man's reaction to your independence tells you how he feels about you. If he respects it and moves closer, that's attraction. If he ignores it, that's neutrality. If he resents it, that's control. Knowing the difference protects your heart. The goal is not to create distance to provoke him. The goal is to stay connected to your own life so that his emotions are free to reveal themselves. When you stop making yourself overly available, you stop interfering with the natural process of attraction. Because the truth is simple, people don't miss what they don't value. And when a man begins to feel the absence of your energy, your attention, your presence, he is learning just how much you matter. The final shift that happens when a man wants more than friendship is that his behavior stops being sporadic and starts becoming consistent. Consistency is one of the most underestimated signs of attraction, yet it is the most reliable. Anyone can be charming in moments. Anyone can show interest when it suits them, but only someone who genuinely cares shows up in a steady, grounded way over time. When a man is emotionally invested, his actions stabilize. He checks in not just when he's bored, but when he's thinking about you. He follows through on what he says. He remembers. He returns. This isn't because he's trying to impress you. It's because your presence has become part of his emotional routine. You are no longer a spontaneous option. You are a psychological anchor. From a deeper perspective, consistency happens when someone's nervous system begins to associate you with comfort and reward. We repeat what feels good. We maintain what feels meaningful. When he starts building habits around you, texting you good morning, asking about your day, making plans, without being prompted, it means your connection has crossed from curiosity into attachment. This is also where fantasy turns into intention. A man may like you for a long time in his mind, but when he wants more, he begins to act in ways that protect the connection. He doesn't leave things vague. He doesn't let long gaps grow without reaching out. He doesn't disappear and reappear. His presence becomes predictable, and that predictability creates emotional safety. And emotional safety is what allows love to form. Many women get trapped analyzing mixed signals, but mixed signals simply mean mixed investment. When his interest is real, his behavior becomes simple. You don't have to decode it. You feel it. There's a calmness that replaces anxiety because consistency removes uncertainty. What's important is not that he is perfect, but that he is present. Even when life is busy, even when things are complicated, he finds a way to stay connected. That's the mark of someone who doesn't want to lose you. And here's where your self-worth comes into play. When you are aligned with your own value, you don't accept emotional unpredictability as romance. You recognize that real desire shows up. It doesn't hide. It doesn't keep you guessing. Consistency is not boring. It's powerful. It means someone is choosing you again and again, not just when it's easy, but when it matters. So if you ever wonder whether he wants more than friendship, don't look for intensity. Look for reliability. Look for the quiet, steady ways he makes space for you in his life. Because when someone keeps coming back to you without being asked, it's not coincidence. It's commitment beginning to form.